Hey folks, and welcome back to the Shed Project. I've been trying to get the length of the videos down below about 7 minutes, and I just don't think that's going to happen. I can't do the amount that I want to do at the pace that I want to do with the explanations that I want in that length of time. So this is just, the videos are going to be a little longer than you might really like. Anyway, today's work, guys, we're going to be going back into Sketchup to our Shed Project. But we're also going to learn about moving and copying components. We'll learn about editing a component, how components behave when you edit them, making a component unique, and completing the floor frame. We'll complete the floor frame today. The piece of wood that we'll be working with today, if you were to buy it in the real world, it's like this. It's a 2x6 by 8-foot piece of treated wood. It's the same type of wood that we built our first component out of, but it's just shorter. It's just 8 feet long instead of 12 feet. So we're going to look at the basics of moving components. Now, when you move a component, you can grab it anywhere. I can grab it on the surface, so it says on this face in component number 1, and I can move that component kind of in any direction I want. For all of our purposes, we're going to only want to move them straight back and forth or straight up and down. So to do that, you can see right now I've got kind of a green dashed line indicating that I'm moving along the green axis here. Sometimes it will try to snap off the green axis. I can move it along the blue axis, which is up and down. If I can get it aligned just right. Now my line is blue, so I'm moving it up and down along the blue axis. And I can move it back and forth along the red axis. You want to make sure when you're doing this that we have it on one of these axes. You can also move it a specific distance, and we're going to be doing quite a bit of that. So if I make sure that I am on the red axis, the green axis, I let go of my mouse and I don't touch it anymore. And then I enter the distance. You'll see the distance in the bottom right-hand corner. So right now it says that I'm moving at 5 foot 2 1/8 inches. If I enter 120 inches in there, it will move 10 feet, just like that. That's going to be important, and you have to keep that in mind. I'm just going to undo that and move it back. You can also grab your components by the snap features to different parts of them. So if I want to move, say, this yellow component, and I get up to on that shape and it says corner of component number 2, I can grab it by that corner, and then I can carefully place that corner on the corner of my other component. I could place the corner on the midpoint of that edge in my component, or I could place the corner right there. That's one thing. I can also grab it by the midpoint in the component and sort of put it right there if I wanted to it to look like that for some reason. So for right now, I'm going to grab this component and I'm going to move it into position where I sort of want it to make my points here in the lesson. And we'll have the move tool. I will grab it by that corner and put it to that corner. Duplicating a component, so copying a component, a lot of different design software has a specific copy command, so that you would hit copy and then you would copy your piece. In SketchUp, you actually do the same thing as the move command, so you click on your box and you start moving it, and then you hit control, hit the control key, and that will replace the original one that you went to move. So now I can move this right to the edge of that component, and I would have a shape that looks something like that. One thing, I will undo that. One other thing that you can know about moving is click on the component, click control, and you move it to that component. Now if you look at the bottom, after I've moved it, if I just type in X4 and hit enter, it will copy it 4 times so that I end up with a total of 5 of them. And that's how you make multiple copies in SketchUp. It will copy them, and it will move each one the same distance that you moved the original one, if that makes sense. Another thing that we want to keep in mind here is editing components. So if I want to say, I want to keep this, let me undo that, and I will just move this, copy it. So I have a little shape here that's a little bit simpler and we don't have to watch those other shapes. If I want to change a component, if I've made some kind of mistake or I want to modify a component in one place, I can do that by clicking this and I hit edit component, and then that component opens up and I can modify it. So I can push pull to one side of that, but watch what happens now. Everywhere in the drawing, that component is going to change. So that has its advantages, but if I wanted to keep all these three parts touching and I modify a component, I would just have to rearrange those parts after. And I'll just hit escape so that it doesn't do that. When you want to close the component, you can't actually click on the component and close it. That's kind of a strange thing. You have to click off the component and then hit close component, and now that component is closed and you cannot edit it anymore. If I decide that I only want to change one component, if I was to draw something and decide that I need just a different version of that component, or if I want that component to look a little bit different than the other ones in one place in a drawing, what I have to do is click this component and then select Make Unique. So now that component is its own component. It's not the same component as this other one anymore. And if I edit it, I can now push-pull it, and the other one will not be affected. So you can see the other one is not changing size and shape, and this one is. I have to explain the reasoning behind the dimensions that we're doing here. We're trying to build this model shed in SketchUp as though we were building it in the real world so that you would actually know how it's put together. So we have to follow things to scale in order to kind of keep the realistic nature of this up here. And we've got three pieces here that I want to show you. This red piece represents the component that you built last day. And this 96-inch yellow piece here represents the component that you'll be building today. This 96-inch long blue piece is a sheet of plywood. I've just changed the colors so that it's easy to follow and easy to see what's going on here. So we've already made this red one. We'll be making this yellow one today, and we will be duplicating those to complete the floor frame. And there's a little something that you might have a question about, which is, well, when you buy an 8-foot piece, we're going to end up cutting 3 inches off of them. And this is the reason for that, is that if you were building this shed in the real world, you would have to put a plywood floor on it, and your plywood would come in a length of 4 feet by 8 feet. So it would also be 96 inches long. Now, if I take that piece of plywood and I move it down onto my shed floor here and set it in place, you can see that the plywood is 96 inches long. This joist is 96 inches long, plus you actually have 1.5 inches on this piece here and this piece here. So that means that the frame is wider than the plywood is long, which means that these edges here of the plywood will have no support, and you won't be able to nail that piece of plywood down to the joist. So if I was to move this plywood back and I get it by the right spot, shift it, you can see there's 1.5 inch gap in right here. So we are going to have to cut these 96-inch pieces down by 3 inches. And in the real world, you would take a saw and you would saw 3 inches off of every one of those pieces. Since it's SketchUp, we're going to have a much easier life, and we'll just make 93-inch pieces and duplicate them. So we'll get those 96-inch pieces cut down to 93 inches. That will make the overall width of our frame 96 inches. which will match the length of our plywood, and all the edges of the plywood will be supported, and there will be wood underneath all the edges to drive nails and screws into. So moving into the shed building part of the day, we're going to add that cross piece, that other joist, and we'll get this sort of focused in a little bit where we need it. Put it in the center of the screen, orbit it so that we can see straight onto it, and zoom in a little bit. And once again, it's kind of off the screen, so we'll drag it into the middle again. And we're going to add a rectangle right here in order to build our joist. So you'd want to make sure that you're snapping actually. Oh, wrong tool. Make sure that you're snapping exactly on this very corner right here, because you want that rectangle to be on that surface. Make sure that your outline is in red, and then you can enter in the where's my, okay, so I've got my I'm having a little trouble here, but now it's in red. So if it's in red, I'm good, and I enter 5.5 comma 1.5, and I hit enter, and there my rectangle came out facing the wrong way, which I had checked out earlier and it wasn't doing that. The only thing to do about that, remember I entered 5.5 comma 1.5. Well, I'm going to undo that, and I'm going to redo my rectangle. And okay, I've run into another little interesting thing that has, this is actually new to SketchUp as far as I know, but now my rectangle is drawing, it's drawing kind of outwards from the middle of the rectangle. So I'm building a rectangle around that point, and I don't want that. If I hit Control, it goes back to being a normal, ordinary rectangle. So I put my rectangle on there, make sure that it's red. The first time I entered 5.5 comma 1.5, this time I'm going to enter 1.5 comma 5.5. Just reverse the two numbers and it'll be fine. So you're going to take this rectangle and you will pull it out to 93 inches. Is it coming? Yes. I do not. Do you want to overwrite it with your current changes? Yes. 93, enter. So now I've made my other component that I'm going to make today, but I haven't made it a component yet. I get my select tool, boom, 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 1, 2, 3, fast, make it a component. If I want to name it, I would name this 2 by 2 inch by 6 inch by 8 foot, and that's done. So there we go, and we're going to have to paint bucket it to be that green color of wood that we like so much. Boom, done making that component. So now we will have to move that that other joist so that we have two joists, another joist going this way. So this is going to be your first experience at actually moving something. Remember what I said about being able to grab things from a corner. First of all, make sure you've got the right part selected, because moving gets a little frustrating if you don't have the right part selected. So you can select the move tool and hover over a part and it will select it. But if you have the wrong piece selected and you hover over a part, you get the right point that you want. Well, now I'm moving the wrong piece. So I just hit escape and that goes back, and I would make sure that I have my correct part selected, get my move tool, and I want to go right onto, I want to snap onto that corner. So I'm going to hit that. Now I've got my control key to make sure that I'm duplicating it, and then I can move this part right down to there, and I have two pieces of my floor frame done. This would probably be a good time, if you haven't already, to just get rid of that red shape there. We don't need that red shape anymore. It was just kind of a landmark to get us situated. And we can center this a little bit. And now what we'll do, we will move this joist here, and we're going to make lots of duplicates. So we're going to do a move, and you can click on it anywhere and move it, as long as you make sure that you're moving it on the green axis, right? So you're going to hit Control so that you're duplicating it. So now I'm making more than one. I'm going to hit 16 inches for the distance, which I just typed in the number 16 and I hit enter, and then I'm going to hit X9. I'm going to enter X9 and push enter, and that's going to give me 9 of them. So that is all the pieces that we need. But the way the situation works out, if you look back at this back corner here and zoom in a little bit, you've got one joist that is like that. That's how it works out. I mean, there's probably a long explanation for it, but you guys have heard lots of long explanations today already. So I'm going to get that corner right there, and I'm just going to move it back into the position that it needs to be in, which is snapped in on that corner, and boom, that's done. Make sure that you save this work. And I'm not sure there's anything else I had to touch on. Tomorrow we will have to shift some of these joists over just to match the edges of the plywood, or next day, I guess. But this is it for today. And if you look at what we've done here, we really do have a fine looking shed floor frame. So I'll see you next day, and I hope everybody has a good one.